So that's what a lot of, I mean, that's where my work and a lot of what you speak about starts to connect together, because I really find it interesting to see who's truly in control and truly has the power. So who are the most powerful people on earth, in your opinion, from the information and the people you've talked to? Who do you think are the ones that you can actually use their name?
Very interesting and important point you're making here. First of all, I think those who are lesser known, even if they, because there's still power factions, and it's like we discussed on my show, it's like the mafia situation, right? Yes, there are in-warring factions, but if they have an outer enemy, they band together to crush it. So obviously, if, for example, RFK would win and he knows how to take on corruption and clean up the system and divide the oligarchs from the public tools that they need to have their claws on and suck dry, that's going to be someone all of them will band together against, even if they are having infighting. But I think per definition, Bill Gates, for example, cannot be as dangerous as an oligarch, as a power player, than, say, a network that people don't even in general know exist. Because just not being on the radar of anyone, per definition, makes you more dangerous. Because it's like money, right? You can say, who is the richest guy? You know what, Johnny? It doesn't matter when you come up to a certain amount of trillions, because just having like 100 billion, you can never spend that money in your lifetime. Even if you tried, every day you went out and shopped and whatever, you can't spend it. It doesn't matter. The only reason they want all those money isn't for themselves. You reach, I don't know, 1 billion and there's nothing more you can achieve. They wanted to control the rest of the world. That's why they need that money, to flush it back into the world and shape the world by giving incentives here and bribing there, and so therefore, in the same vein, it's the same with power. When you have a certain amount, if you have enough power that you can kill anyone you want and get away with it, it doesn't matter if you're number 3 or number 5 in that list. But if nobody knows about you, except, of course, other players, then that gives you an extra layer of dangerousness. And I will name some. But I would just want to pose a question before I start naming names. You know, David Rothkopf, he wrote in his book, The Superclass, that there's about 300 families and 6,000 individuals in this super elite. So we can identify them sociologically, but how much do you think? Because we were talking about how ideology and ideas have been hijacked and is not anymore after the reset from 45 and onwards, and organizations and networks. But the elite remains, they linger on. But among the elite, there was also certain ideas that was prevailing in the old world order. And it's still in the one we're in now. And it's probably also in the one we're going into. So I would ask you, Johnny, how much do you think the elites are ruled by that, and not just brute power and greed and whatever, and psychopathy? Like, for example, transhumanism is obviously an ideology. So do you think they have kept their ideological agenda?
That's really that I think comes within. You said earlier that the CIA has got to be viewed as a cult, and I think this level of the elite have to be viewed in the same way. And we see lots of like evidence of it. We see lots of clues to it, like an eyes wide shut sort of like finger pointing straight at this super class that exists. And they've obviously got traditions that we probably don't even know exist, and organizations that we don't even know exist. And if you hear and you believe, and I do believe some of the stories I've I've heard about people who are kids who have been trafficked into these sort of areas and their experience. It's like these people are just completely lacking in empathy, and it makes me wonder. It makes lots of people who are spiritual and who are religious wonder if there's some form of beast, if they're down with evil, if they're satanic or whatnot. It makes me wonder if these powerful classes, the it's survival of the most narcissistic, and that the narcissistic genes have just kept replicating and floating to the top of the ruling class, and they're in their own little cycle, in their own little bubble, and that bubble probably allows them to build up some form of their own cultural or idea of what their culture is, what their cult is, what their beliefs are, how they separate from the people below. For us, we're looking up at these people, we're going, damn these people, and they know we're doing that and they love it. So the feeding of becoming the more powerful part of it, and they love that, and it get more powerful, they view us as more powerful, and then it makes them often, I think, want to see things happen. And this is, again, in testimony given by people who've been in those sort of circles and seen really dark stuff, have said, it's the worst things are happening behind closed doors. So they've got to have their own ethos. They've got to have their own. They've got their own culture. We don't understand it. We don't understand it. It's separated from us, and it's separated by.
No, it's a cultural breakaway civilization.
Yeah, it's a form of counterculture that has all of the power because of the way that money works and wealth works, and that the more narcissistic amongst us and the more power hungry amongst us, of course, want the most wealth, and so proactively go after it. While a lot of people, I mean, the real accusation to be had is, why do these people exist? Well, why isn't there a barrier to that? Why isn't there, as soon as people get that rich, a load of people who say, oh my God, that is unhealthy, we can see a lot of these super rich, we can see a load of them, so why don't we react like that? And it's because a lot of people just don't want trouble in their lives.
We only see an image of them, we never see anything real about them.
But even in the image, it's like they're like, that's too much for me to handle. It's so detached from my own reality. My reality of being able to look at my bank account, see if I can actually be able to afford to eat tonight. That reality is so far removed from their reality. They don't have any of those troubles.
No. And Alex Jones, the canary in the coal mine for podcasters, he makes actually a good point that he's been making ever since I knew he came on my radar, and that's that the elites are bored. When you can do anything, have anything, you start developing like a psychopathical mind, because it was never meant. No human being can handle it. The old saying, power corrupts and ultimate power corrupts ultimately. So nobody can really, very few, you have to be like a Jesus level to be, and they don't want that, right? To be able to withstand the temptations and the sadism that just comes from a empty, because they don't have real values. You love your kid, right? Someone loves their church or whatever. We find things that make life meaningful for us, and these are usually at best, at least they're harmless things. They may even be beneficial things. That's the normal culture in all the world since dawn of mankind. But these people have only a vacuum, and it needs, and it's like you pour in power, but they can never satisfy them, and so they have to develop narcissism and psychopathy. But let alone that, what about, like Whitney has uncovered, and you too, that, and many others, that these pedophile games and stuff is often also is a tool. Also, it's not just a culture; it's also a tool, right, to maybe lure the 3%ers into, so they can get a gridlock on them. So the question is, how much is this a real culture, and how much is it just a play?
And okay, if we're gonna go, if we're gonna accept that my audience and the people who listen to you can handle a thought that's really dark I think that we are misunderstanding a lot of it. I think that the majority of people who go to get seduced by sex games, elite sex stuff, the majority of them get seduced by beautiful ladies who are what we would call in Britain on the game, who are really just like selling sex for money, and who are have a two-way relationship
And
and
had their first menstruation.
yes, yes. The majority of them are adults,
Mm.
human adults over the age of 18.
Mm.
And there's another group of people, and people like Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell are those people. These are the sadistic preferential pedophiles, as the FBI would profile them as. And I don't think people can really understand what these people are doing and how these people live. When you're talking about how you can pour as much emotion and emotional content into a real low down narcissist, and it just doesn't have any emotional output, won't come. You're just wasting. It's just buffer. With these people, it was like they're feeding these people and pedophiles and pedophile elites feed off these children's energy in a way that seems religious, definitely cultish, that they need to feel a certain level of controllable fear, that they can turn the fear up and down and they stay within a range. They like a certain range. They have a profile. Epstein has a very significant profile. Only breaks every now and again, and those breaks are times where you have to examine the person who's saying the statements of what happened if they don't match his profile, because his profile is very, very narrow. It's very unique. He liked girls between the ages of, it seems, 13 to about 17. 18 was too old. Over 20 was just way too old.
Which is why it was unrequited love with Ghislaine.
Yeah, and Ghislaine loved. She loved to but unrequited love, but it was a different type of love. She could do something for him, and she realized how powerful he would remain and how much of a good fixer and how many connections. He was like the person you could ride on the back, and they can maintain a relationship that looks loving, appears to be like a mature adult relationship between two people, but the relationship wasn't really unrequited love. There was two-way love. It was a different type of love. It was a love of being able to supply the thing that they loved from each other. And what that was...
God, he must have reminded her so of her father.
Yeah.
Sounds like a substitute there.
Completely. And she was, if you look at how her father punished her, it was like, choose the whip. Do you want the cat of nine tails, or do you want the horse whip, or whatever? Wow. That's what you're going to be punished by. Everything's sexual and weird once you enter into the Maxwell family back then, when Robert Maxwell was the head of household, really lacking in empathy. It seems like the whole clan had this like extreme narcissistic personality disorder. Every single one of them was just really on the spectrum of like really, really fierce, unable to detach emotionally from the rest of humanity and say, we are superior. Our family itself are superior to everybody. And that let Ghislaine function for Epstein in a way that was like, she would bring girls to him, and then she would stand in the doorway, and when the girls realized what was happening, and he's unveiled his penis on the massage table, the girls would turn around and find Ghislaine Maxwell standing at the door. Now, at that moment, he's about to get what he wants, and he gets the kick that he wants to, and the kick is to feel that girl's fear and to feel that she doesn't want to be with him, and that he is going to go through a process that means that she will then accept him and do something that's extremely personal for him. And that's like a weird psychopathy of like, and then he would also, like the way he talked to these girls, he would also project out this kindness, caring, all of this sort of stuff. So he would reform their relationship from this one of fear into one of a kind, loving father figure who's there for them, and that's how he worked, that gave him power, but the fear had to be there, and the fear was created by people like Ghislaine Maxwell and these girls not having an escape and turning around and discovering that there was a woman there who she was also feeding off a different type of energy, a sexual energy. She was very unrequited love. No, she wasn't into Epstein. She was into girls roughly between the age of 13 and 17. She was into exactly the same. I still believe, and I still believe that I tracked her down when she was in hiding sharing child porn. I still believe it. The actual, I found this user. It was organized. It was just like, so if you study what pedophiles are like, they're so organized with everything, like the preferential.
I mean, they have to be, otherwise they end up in jail.
Well, no, because I'm getting it. What I'm saying is wrong, because it's situational pedophiles will be messy and they end up in jail.
Yeah.
So the preferential pedophiles are organized. They organize their videos, rename them, do all of that. So when they're sharing them online, this one was sharing. It was Gil, GHISL was the username, and it was coming from the IP address was going through a server room in Canada that was from a company that was. The chairman located at that very building was Brian Mulroney, who used to be the Prime Minister of Canada and was close friends with Robert Maxwell. And it was just like, oh my God, it's so obvious. And it's the age range. It's the 14 to 18 sort of like age range that they both were. They were the same creature. They loved the fear. They loved to get that fear. When that girl turned around, Ghislaine Maxwell would be getting off tonight. She'd be able to get off tonight at the thought of the fear and the pain and all of that power she's got over somebody else. And she loved to have power, she used sex as a tool, but I don't think people would see like, it's not like she used sex to orgasm. She used sex as a powerful tool.
Rape is always about power.
Yeah. And then the rest is like, I'm not sure Ghislaine Maxwell would ever have been able to come. I think nothing would ever be able to, well, probably some things, but nothing that we can think of could possibly reach what she had and what she needed to get off, and what she needed to get off and release was the pain of other people, and to feed off that pain. That makes them a very interesting, they had a really symbiotic relationship. It was really clear. So I don't believe that it was one side or the other. No. It's amazing to study, because it made that combination of the two made this different relationship that you very rarely see. This extremely powerful, extremely rich pedophile child trafficker at the center of the intelligence networks of the world. There's going to be stories that come from their activities that we still don't know about, coming for decades and decades, maybe hundreds of years to come. They'll be still mapping out that how sick that relationship was, and it's a drama.
Yeah, and I'm also convinced you were onto her. But let's use this as a case study then, because we were talking about the bigger picture, and this is a prime example of how some of these players get their psychology formation, and sexuality and psychology goes hand in hand. So you can pull a Willem Reich on me anytime. He wrote the book or the orgasm function of the orgasm, where he proved how fascism, one of the psychological components to fascism, is impotence and frigidity. And you block the life energy, basically, so you can't express it. That's why the hippie movement had to have the opposite manifestation of fascism, because the free sex, everybody, we don't care about any borders or limits, right? Completely chaos. So this goes hand in hand. But back to and how much is culture, how much is psychology, how much is a tool? It's probably a big mesh. It's the same as us, right? We can't divorce ourselves entirely from the information. It becomes a unit. Same with them. They take what they have, this culture, this psychology, and they make honey traps out of it, etc. Although Whitney makes a good point these days. She says that we don't really need an Epstein anymore because of the technological development is so advanced. So now we can afford losing the old schoolers like the function he had.